Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, hi again, everybody. This is Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today our guest is Dena Strehlow. Dina is the Senior Director of Business Development for Threotech, an interesting manufacturer and marketer of Magtein, which is a magnesium-based supplement component. Dena Strehlow, thank you so much for joining us on the Think Small podcast today.
Great to be here. Thank you, Bob.
Absolutely. So tell us, Dina, about you have a long career in this kind of space, right? With supplement components and brands. Tell us about your journey here and what makes Threotech so unique in the marketplace.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I began my career as a scientist. I'm classically trained as a PhD food scientist and started my career over 30 years ago at General Mills, big CPG. And after
Sure.
20 years on lots of innovative products and R&D development, I chose to move a little bit upstream to the B2B ingredient supplier industry, where I've been for the last 10, 11 years. And I first joined Archer Daniels Midland, ADM, and helped them integrate the Wild Flavors business unit into their nutrition business, and then moved to Tate and Lyle. And I was fortunate to be the global account director to the PepsiCo beverage side. And that was, of course, great fun. And beyond that, I've moved now, as of late, to the functional ingredient side. I'm with Magtein, which is represented by our US distributor, AIDP, who's been around for over 30 years, and AIDP has a number of functional actives, but Magtein is one of them. So Magtein, as you said, it's a pretty special functional that we actually just won 2 awards at the Vita Food Show in Europe, and we're up as a finalist for the Nutri-Ingredient Awards in the US to be presented at
Wow.
IFT coming up. So what makes Magtein so unique is it's a patented proprietary form of magnesium, magnesium L-threonate to be frank. And as you said, it's clinically shown and clinically studied, many animal studies prior to that, but crosses the blood-brain barrier. So it was first discovered by some researchers at MIT. We own the license globally and the patents. And it was discovered about 15 years ago. It's been very successful in the supplement aisle. And now what I'm here to help do, which I'm very excited by, is to move Magtein into food and beverages, because functional food and beverages are really on trend. And, it's positioned for cognitive, memory, focus, and mood, and a lot of those emotional well-being things that kind of hit us after COVID are
For
really
sure.
really important to today's younger consumers. So that's just a little bit about me and Magtein.
Interesting. So you mentioned breaking the blood-brain barrier.
Hmm.
For the novices like me here in the podcast audience, tell us a little bit more about that. Why is that so important?
Yeah, it's a really it's a deeper question, but basically your brain needs magnesium. And we all know magnesium is a nutrient of need. You can look at the side panel. It's on the label if there's any in the product. And what most Americans don't realize is our diets have fallen short of magnesium over the years. There's not enough in the soil content to get into
Hmm.
our foods. And a lot of people, me included, when I started this job, I actually had blood work done, and I was deficient or borderline deficient in magnesium. And this starts to affect you, like your concentration ability, your sleep quality, just some, quality of life, important things. And I
Hmm.
began taking Magtein, and I just feel so much better throughout the day. I'm able to, really just focus in the afternoon, like right about now, and sleep and wake up really refreshed. It doesn't help me sleep longer, but just more refreshing. And what people don't realize is many supplements and magnesium will be absorbed into the blood Some are not very good at being absorbed into the blood. So long story short, not all magnesium is the same. But when you look at the bioavailable forms, very few, if any, other than Magtein, have been shown, you know, not necessarily human clinicals, but animal clinicals, to have crossed into the blood-brain barrier. That means it's transported not only in the bloodstream, but it actually makes its way into the brain, which is, where the neurotransmission and lots of good cognitive activity happens.
Sure,
And
sure.
that's why when you take Magtein, you could actually feel a difference. Or, if you're sipping a beverage or something with Magtein in it, it's very bioavailable and you can feel it working.
So, and that's what you where you want the product to ultimately go is to the
Yes,
brain. You don't
yes.
necessarily need it to be transferred through the body through the blood.
Well, it helps to be transferred to the body and the blood and actually make it into the bloodstream, but you ultimately need it. Very few materials will cross over into transport through the blood-brain barrier. In fact, when MIT was you founded this, they were looking for Alzheimer type drugs that might do
Interesting.
that. So anyway,
Okay. And Magtein was able to solve that problem.
yes, it is, and it's getting noticed by these industry awards, and more food and beverages are entering the marketplace. It's present in one of those on the shelf called Recess Mood, which you might see in your local Target or Walmart, and that's been
Okay.
out for a few years, and that's just one that I'll throw out there.
That's great. So your product, Magtein, is actually one of those, as you call it, bioavailable components or ingredients that goes into other products that we would find on store shelves. And
Mhm.
it's available, so that is then available in many different forms, correct?
Yes, it's available, in supplement formats. We've got gummies and chew type customers that have, a whole basket of things. And then in the beverage and food aisle, or in the nutrition facts panel, as we say, it's making its way into more and more products because of this consumer need today, and cognitive and stress and mental well-being, is well on a lot of people's radar. So people are
Of course.
paying, looking for that
Oh,
benefit.
interesting. So you've been in this space for a long time, but how long have you been with Magtein then?
Right. I've been with Magtein a year. A year ago this week I joined.
Okay.
So it's been a great space to be in, and meeting different people, whether they be food and beverage clients or supplement, and going out to some large nutritional and food and beverage trade shows. As I mentioned, IFT is coming up in July.
Sure, sure. So, in your experience with larger and some smaller companies, how have you been able to navigate clearly there's ups and downs in any product in any industry of revenue, right? Times of great sales and times of revenue contraction. So, tell us about a time when the product you were working on during a period of revenue contraction, how you helped navigate a business through that period.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've seen that. I've experienced that a few times in my career, and it's not always easy. But I think, getting together and collaborating with your colleagues and the customer or the consumer, whoever you're serving, and really just taking a step back and asking yourself, are we missing something? Is consumer behavior or customer retailer behavior changing? Do we need to reevaluate our product line and perhaps position it differently? Talk to consumers, talk to users, talk to people that aren't using, and find out and really gather those insights and ask the tough questions of, wow, this is growing, maybe our product isn't. What if, and then start thinking about the possibilities and testing those out, and not being afraid to be, to pivot. I always say that you can't always grow if you keep doing what you're doing, because the market shifts and preferences shift. So I've seen that a number of times, and it's I always remember a phrase that I learned during one of those challenging times. Um, It's not that you're either winning or losing. You're either winning or learning. So that's kind of my motto.
I like that, and I've used that in the past, right? We don't learn from our successes as much as we learn from our failures,
Hmm.
for sure. Well, kind of on the flip side of that discussion is, tell us about a time when you were, with a business that was drastically ramping up revenue and sales, and whether it was a new product or a new market, or because sometimes that brings up challenges in a business that we don't necessarily see beforehand and we don't really forecast for. So tell us about a time when you were leading a business through time of rapidly increasing sales.
Yes, yes. It's, kind of a good problem to have until it hits you where you're faced with it. And, the last thing you want to do um leave a user or consumer or customer not feeling like you care. So I think first and foremost, you have to address it head on and be upfront and transparent to the client base you're serving. And if I've experienced allocation where you can't make enough to keep up with demand, and the forecast is ramped up, you can't make enough. You just have to be very transparent within and have a plan and have a second plan and a third plan in case those are needed. But be very transparent and bring your user into the mix early on because they can help you strategize more than you think, whether they've experienced something like it or not. And boy, today's world of AI power, there's some new tools in the mix that can help with those predicaments. I think of the supply chain first and, just not having material available, whether it be an ingredient or a product on shelf. We all saw that during COVID. Some of our favorite products were not even on
Certainly.
the shelf. And so sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And, think of a time when there were about a dozen SKUs of a certain item. Well, you kind of have to let go and say, which two can we put on shelf and focus
Mm.
on those and focus on, a flawless execution of those and let the others go because you can't do everything perfectly in those challenging times.
Interesting, right? So maybe getting rid of some complexity in the product line or in the supply chain, and honestly, like you said, if you want to know what's going on with your customer, just ask them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we get away from that a little bit in periods of rapid growth. So thank you for that. Dina, tell us a little bit more about, other uses for Magtein and other products that you see. What's the future hold for Magtein?
Yes, yes. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that, what is I see going on is so many different formats are, including functional benefits and ingredient stacks. Sometimes I see everything but the kitchen sink in a formula where it's like, oh, that's kind of diluting the message. But where I see a lot of growth, particularly at the recent Supply Side Connect show that I attended a month ago in New Jersey, but is the functional beverage space. It's really exploding. Things like ready to drink, better sodas. We all see that area with, Poppy and Olapop and Bloom Pop all having some prebiotics, some talking about it, some not talking so much about it,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is an interesting strategy, and just let the consumer decide. You don't have to hit them front and center sometimes with the functional claims because some consumers, not all consumers have a background in, the science, and nor do they want to know about the science. Other areas I see are the mocktail space. A lot of our young adults are choosing to abstain from alcohol, whether it be because they have to get up the next morning or they have children in the house young, or for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. But they are choosing like the social tonics and these social drinks that kind of help them chill and relax and not have, the hangover feeling the next day. So that's an active space. Functional coffees, I'm talking about beyond protein, I think are hot also because it's a ritual. It's like every morning you get up, wow, I could put my collagen in my coffee, or I'm going to buy this product because it has it already made and it's in it, and I can get it and go. So I think a lot of those items, I think of the hydration space and the energy space as being kind of becoming multifunctional, right? We once saw, the hydration sports drinks, and the stick packs are really growing right now, and because of the
Hmm.
portability. And not everyone's an athlete. I mean, there's so much, people don't are aware that just to function in your desk job or your day job, you need to be hydrated. And
Right.
brands are helping us understand that more. So I think hydration, the lower caffeine energy drinks, maybe stacking with some of the better for you ingredients, the cognitive and the mood and the stress, and the social tonics. All those are very much kind of being positioned and being received well by consumers who are seeking those things. And then, of course, the healthy aging. We all want to be young, even when we're old. So I think whether it be aging physically, joint, or mentally, and here's where the
Hmm.
mental piece of Magtein comes in. One of our higher dose level studies in cognitive performance shows that if you take Magtein over a certain amount of time, it actually reduces your brain age, which, wow, I want to be
Wow.
sharp as I, am in the grandmother age of some of the
Sure.
future. So yeah, so it's just a fascinating industry, and I just love serving consumers and giving customers, something that's innovative and novel, and that they didn't even realize that they need, kind of like our iPhones, right? Or our smartphones.
Sure, sure, sure. So a question I wanted to ask you is because Magtein seems to have some very specific and unique benefits, but you're dependent on the customers you sell
Hmm.
to, I guess, properly communicate those benefits if Magtein is in a specific product. Have you ever had an experience where maybe one of your customers wasn't communicating the benefits of Magtein effectively or properly?
Well, we leave, the brands and the customers, they own their own messages and their positioning and their market.
Okay.
We can provide, the clinical studies and the substantiation that they can then decide, how do we want to market this? Do we want to market this? Might this be better on our website where someone is really, using Chat GPT or AI to figure out what is Magtein? I see the logo on the can, but I don't know what that is. So we provide that type of substantiation to our customers. And of course, let the customer market their product. There may be other actives that, I don't know, are synergistic, or, work in tandem with each other. Or, like I mentioned earlier, they may wish to just say, something very light, like, oh, I brought up recess mood. Recess mood, that's the product name. Um, and they let the consumer, figure it out and feel it and experience it themselves.
Okay.
So
Okay. So really
I
haven't
think,
had any of those challenges with your customers, I guess, saying something wrong about the ingredient that's in their product.
no, not so much, but we're
Okay.
always cautious with the regulations are shifting. Food and beverage, FDA or supplement facts. So we have to be careful, and we want to make sure the customer is aware of what we think could or couldn't, support an efficacious dose, for example, in a product, or use support a usage level.
Interesting. So, Dina, what do you think the future holds for Magtein as a supplement ingredient? What does the next like 3 to 5 years look like for the business?
Yes, I think it is very bright. Magtein has been growing at double digits over the
Great.
past few years, and it is just really being received well. And like I said, has so many angles to the benefits. So we are seeing, of course, fast growth in supplement has now kind of, I don't want to say plateaued, but it's leveling because it's been out on the market for, over 10 years in supplements. And so now the growth has
Okay.
shifted a bit over to the mainstream food and beverage, where there are, certain use limits and whatnot. You can't just put it in every category, but it is FDA grass and it does have use limits in certain categories like beverages and different bars and things like that. But we are definitely seeing that premium functional food and bev opportunity continuing to be strong and new brands emerging continually, which I'm very excited. Next week, I'm going out to BevNet New York, which is an intimate show in Manhattan with, I wouldn't say necessarily startup brands. It's almost like startup brands who are making their way in. So
Okay.
they've got funding, they've got some success. And 9 years ago, that's where Poppy was. They were on stage at the Pitch Slam talking about their brand. I think it was called Mother's Beverage at the time. And who
Hmm.
knew that PepsiCo would pay $2 billion for the Poppy brand? So
Oh
that
my goodness.
kind of demonstrates the pivots that happened over those 9 years. But it's just a really fun, intimate show where everyone, that's what I love about the functional food and bev space too, is that everyone is so collaborative and just wants to share their story and help one another
Hmm.
um, go out there and win. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully we can here at the Think Small podcast can take some part in that, right? In sharing your story and getting the message out there about Magtein.
yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course. Well, listen, Dena Strehlow, the Senior Director of Business Development for Magtein, thank you so much for joining us today on the Think Small podcast.
Okay, take care.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?